I had been on my feet for 16 hours straight, the smell of disinfectant from the hospital clinging to my hair and skin as I dragged myself through the front door, shoes in my hand so I wouldn't wake anyone. My paycheck wasn't much, but those double shifts kept the lights on, kept food in the fridge, kept our mother from worrying about bills she refused to look at. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could finally sink into bed without interruption. But before I even set my bag down, Mom appeared in the hallway, arms crossed like she'd been waiting for me. Her voice carried that casual tone she always used when she was about to drop a demand on me. "Oh, by the way, your sister's friends are coming over. Can you clean up the living room and get snacks? They'll be here in an hour." I blinked, exhausted, every muscle in my body aching, and for a moment I thought I'd misheard her. I worked myself raw so that my sister could lounge around, and now I was supposed to play hostess to her friends too? Mom's eyes softened just slightly, like she could see the protest rising in me, but instead of compassion, her words came sharp. "Don't give me that look. She's young. Let her enjoy herself. You know how important it is for her to have a social life." It was like being slapped. I bit down on my tongue, tasting copper, because if I said what I wanted to, the fragile peace in that house would shatter. So I swallowed it. But deep down, something shifted that night. A crack formed in the blind obedience I had given them all these years, and it was only a matter of time before it split wide open. By the time I was 24, I had learned to measure my life in pay stubs and energy drinks, in the soft shuffle of nurses' shoes down hospital corridors, and the heavy weight of my own body leaning against vending machines at midnight. My sister, 3 years younger, measured hers in selfies and playlists, in late-night laughter echoing through the walls, while I dragged myself home from yet another double shift. It had always been this way. Me the worker, her the darling. Mom's words played like a broken record. She's still figuring herself out. Don't be so hard on her. I used to believe that meant my time would come later, after she grew up, after Mom saw how much I gave. But later never came. Instead, I found myself staring at unpaid utility bills shoved into a drawer, receipts I had covered for groceries and rent, all while my sister breezed past me with shopping bags I hadn't seen her work a single hour to afford. When I asked Mom about it, she'd sigh and say, "She's just a girl. Don't burden her yet." Yet. As if responsibility was a disease I had caught early, and she needed to be protected from it at all costs. That night when she asked me to clean up for her friends, I complied, moving like a ghost through my own house, stacking dirty dishes, wiping down the table, restocking chips and sodas I had paid for. My sister floated in, all perfume and giggles, barely noticing me as she checked her reflection in the hallway mirror. "Thanks," she chirped absently, not even meeting my eyes, as if I were hired help. Her friends arrived in waves, voices loud, shoes scuffing the floor, music blaring. They spread out across the living room, laughing, spilling drinks, dropping crumbs I knew I'd be the one to clean later. Mom sat on the couch smiling, proud, like hosting her daughter's friends was some great achievement. Except it wasn't her effort, wasn't her money, wasn't her exhaustion. It was mine. I stood in the doorway, unseen, my uniform still clinging to me, smelling of antiseptic and sweat. For the first time, I didn't just feel tired. I felt erased. That was the moment it started. Not the revenge itself, but the resolve. I wasn't going to be their invisible servant anymore. They just didn't know it yet. The days blurred into each other after that. A loop of alarms at 5 a.m., cafeteria coffee, charting vitals, pushing wheelchairs, then dragging myself home to a house that treated me like a bank account with hands. My sister never even pretended to pull her weight. She was job hunting, which in her vocabulary meant scrolling through Instagram on the couch while Mom defended her. "She'll find something soon," she'd tell me, but I knew better. I saw the bags she carried in, the new phone case, the salon-done nails. Money was always slipping through my fingers faster than I could earn it, and every time I asked where it was going, Mom would turn sharp, like I was insulting her. "You're not the only one who sacrifices, you know. I gave you life. I kept this house." But I couldn't remember the last time she paid a bill on her own. The last time she even checked the mailbox before I did. What cut the deepest wasn't just the imbalance, it was how little they saw me. When I skipped meals to stretch groceries, no one noticed. When I nodded off mid-conversation because I hadn't slept more than 4 hours, they called me rude. And yet, when my sister announced that she and her friends wanted to throw a small get-together, Mom lit up like it was Christmas morning. I came home that Friday to find balloons tied to chairs, music equipment dragged in, the fridge half empty from snacks I didn't remember buying but certainly had funded. Mom met me at the door, hands on her hips. "Don't start with that face. It's one night. You can handle it." I opened my mouth to argue, but the laughter from the living room cut through, my sister's voice high and careless, like she didn't live under the same roof as the person breaking her back to keep it standing. I swallowed my words, but inside I could feel something clawing up, something that wasn't going to stay quiet forever. Saturday morning, I woke to the thud of bass still pulsing faintly through the floorboards. The aftermath of my sister's small get-together lingering like a hangover I hadn't earned. My head pounded from lack of sleep. My feet were swollen from yesterday's double shift. And the first thing I saw when I walked into the living room was chaos. Empty cups stacked in corners, sticky soda rings staining the coffee table, chip bags and cigarette butts stuffed halfway into the couch cushions. My sister was curled on the sofa like royalty, phone in hand, scrolling and smiling at comments on the photos she had posted the night before. "Can you keep it down?" she muttered without looking up, like I was the intruder in my own home. I wanted to scream, but my throat caught because Mom was right there, standing by the window with her arms crossed. "She had friends over," Mom said before I could get a word out. "You should be proud of her. She's so social. You could learn from that." Proud. The word cracked through me like ice water. Proud of what? That she spent the grocery money I'd scraped together to play hostess? That she left me to face a mountain of cleanup when I could barely stand? I didn't answer. Instead, I picked up a trash bag and started gathering the wreckage. Each crumpled cup felt like proof of how little they valued me, proof of how they used me, proof of how invisible I had become in my own house. I worked in silence, jaw tight, until the trash bag was so heavy I could barely lift it. When I tied it shut, I saw the stain on the rug. Wine, deep red, soaking into the fibers like a wound. That rug had been my one splurge last year, the only pretty thing I allowed myself after months of overtime. And now it was ruined. I froze there staring until Mom finally spoke again. "It's just a rug. Stop being dramatic. You'll buy another when you get paid." My sister laughed at that, soft but sharp, and I felt something snap. That was the first time I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. Done begging for thanks that would never come. Done breaking my body for people who didn't see me as more than a worker bee. I cleaned the stain as best as I could, then retreated to my room. But I didn't rest. I sat at my desk with my phone, pulling up my pay stubs, my bank app, the credit card bills I'd been hiding from myself. The numbers told a story I couldn't ignore anymore. Everything I had was going to them, and nothing was coming back. That night, I made myself a promise. The next shift I worked would be the last one I ever put in for anyone but me. They just didn't know the countdown had already started. The following week, I carried that promise like a secret stone in my pocket, heavy and grounding. Every time Mom asked me to pick up milk on the way home, I thought about how many gallons I had already carried into this house without a single thank you. Every time my sister swanned past in some new outfit, phone pressed to her ear, I wondered how many hours of my overtime had stitched those seams. I still went to work, still clocked in, still smiled at patients who leaned on me to get through their own pain, but at the back of my mind I was calculating, planning, unraveling the web I'd let them spin around me. It was almost funny how little they noticed the shift. My sister kept announcing new plans, brunch with friends, a concert, another party in a couple of weeks. Mom kept repeating her chorus. She's young. Let her live. But when I pulled back just slightly, didn't leave cash on the counter, didn't offer to cover the internet bill, didn't restock the fridge immediately, there was tension. I heard Mom on the phone with her sister whispering about how tight things have been lately, as if the money fairy had just stopped visiting. My sister complained that the Wi-Fi was too slow, glaring at me like I had personally insulted her. I stayed quiet, watching, almost curious how long it would take before they realized I wasn't going to patch every hole. At the hospital, one of the older nurses, Carla, asked me why I always looked so drained. I almost lied, but something in her steady gaze made me crack. I told her everything in the break room, about the bills, the parties, the way my own family treated me like a servant. She didn't gasp or pity me. She just nodded, then said, "Honey, they'll never stop if you don't make them. You think you're protecting them, but really you're just burying yourself." Her words echoed louder than any music at my sister's parties. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and I knew Carla was right. Protecting them wasn't love, it was surrender. And I had surrendered long enough. The next morning, when I woke to Mom calling through the door, "Don't forget to grab sodas after work. Your sister's friends are coming again." I didn't answer. I let the silence stretch, and for the first time, it was me who held the power. By the time that second party rolled around, the house felt less like a home and more like a hotel lobby that I was forced to staff without pay. Balloons again, laughter echoing before I even pulled into the driveway, cars parked haphazardly up the street. I sat in my car for a long minute, engine idling, watching silhouettes move behind the curtains. My chest burned, but not from exhaustion anymore, from clarity. I walked in, and the smell of alcohol and perfume hit me before the music did. My sister was perched on the arm of the couch, drink in hand, hair done like she was about to step onto a runway. Mom beamed at her like a stage mom, introducing her to a new cluster of friends as though she were some rising star. No one looked at me as I slipped past, still in my scrubs, shoes squeaking faintly on the floor, sticky from spilled soda. I headed straight to my room, shut the door, and pulled out the small lockbox I kept under the bed. Inside was every pay stub, every bank printout, every receipt where my name sat next to charges for groceries, utilities, rent. I laid them out across the bed like evidence, a paper trail of my servitude. I took pictures of everything, one by one, until my phone was full of proof. Proof I wasn't crazy. Proof I wasn't imagining the weight I carried. Proof they had used me. The music downstairs got louder, bass vibrating up the walls, but it only steeled my focus. I opened a job listing site, the one I had ignored for years because I couldn't imagine leaving Mom and my sister. This time I clicked through postings with intent, saving opportunities in cities hours away, even states away. For the first time, the thought of being far from them didn't make me guilty. It made me breathe easier. The floorboards creaked outside my door, and Mom's voice called softly, "Don't be such a killjoy. Come downstairs and mingle. It'll do you good." I didn't answer. I kept scanning listings, heart thumping, because I knew this was no longer about endurance, it was about escape. And in that silence, with laughter and music rattling around me, I realized something profound. They thought I was trapped. But I was already halfway gone. 2 nights later, I came home from another back-to-back shift to find the electricity bill propped against my pillow like some kind of love note. The amount due was circled in red pen, Mom's handwriting beneath it. Pay by Friday. No pleas, no discussion, no acknowledgement of how many times I had already covered it. Just expectation. My stomach twisted, but instead of reaching for my wallet, I picked up my phone. I pulled up the photos I had taken, the pay stubs, the receipts, the endless trail of proof, and I scrolled through them like armor. Each image reminded me I wasn't imagining the imbalance, that my exhaustion had a name and a source. Down the hall, I heard my sister's laugh through the thin walls, muffled chatter from her on speakerphone with friends planning another weekend out. I walked to the kitchen where Mom was stirring something on the stove, humming. She didn't look up when she said, "Don't forget, your sister needs money for gas tomorrow. Lend her 40, will you?" The words landed like a slap, but I stayed calm, leaning against the doorway. "No," I said flat, without explanation. Mom froze, spoon midair, then slowly turned. "Excuse me?" I repeated steady. "No, I'm not giving her anything." The silence stretched, broken only by the bubbling pot. Then Mom's voice hardened. "Don't start this selfish streak. You've always been the responsible one. You know she can't manage on her own." I almost laughed, bitter and sharp. Responsible one. That title had chained me here, kept me running in circles while they sat back. But not anymore. I turned, walked away, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. In my room, I opened my laptop and applied for 3 jobs that night, each one outside this town, each one a door away from the life that had been bleeding me dry. And as I hit send on the last application, I whispered into the dark, "I'm done being your safety net." Upstairs, the lights flickered from the strained electric grid, and for once I didn't panic about how to keep them on. Let them see what happens when I'm not the one holding the wires together. The shift in me must have been obvious, because within a week both Mom and my sister started circling like sharks that smelled blood in the water. Mom tried her usual tactics first, the guilt trips, the sighs heavy enough to rattle the windows, the reminders of how much she had sacrificed raising me. But the words slid off like water now. My sister, on the other hand, went straight for venom. She barged into my room one afternoon, mascara smudged from fake tears, demanding, "Why are you being so cold? You used to help me. What happened to you?" I didn't even look up from my laptop. "I woke up," I said. The silence that followed was thick, and then came her laugh, short and mean. "You think you're better than us because you work? Newsflash, you're still stuck here, same as me." Her words should have cut, but instead they fueled me. She thought I was stuck because she couldn't imagine me leaving. She thought my loyalty was permanent. That night, while she was out, I pulled 2 suitcases from the closet and began folding clothes quietly. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't explain. I just prepared. At work, Carla noticed again, and when I confessed what I was planning, she gripped my shoulder and said, "Don't wait for permission. If you want your life back, you take it." It echoed in my ears as I slipped important papers into a folder. Birth certificate, bank statements, the lease I was still technically responsible for. I wasn't running away. I was reclaiming. The breaking point came when I found Mom in the kitchen late one evening with my pay stub in her hand, the one I had left in my bag. She didn't look embarrassed, didn't even flinch. She just said, "Good. Now I know how much extra you can cover this month." That was it. No shame, no apology, just assumption. I took the paper back without a word, walked to my room, and zipped the first suitcase shut. The sound was final, loud even over the music thudding from my sister's room. It was the sound of the life I'd been forced into ending, and the life I chose beginning. 2 days later, I put in for vacation time at the hospital. Only a week, but it was enough to make them stop expecting me to walk through the door every night with grocery bags and an open wallet. When I told Mom, she barely looked up from the TV. "Fine, but don't forget the rent is due," she muttered, like my entire identity was tied to handing over that envelope at the first of the month. I didn't correct her. I didn't say that this time there would be no envelope. Instead, I drove straight from work to a storage facility across town, rented a unit, and began moving things in piece by piece. My books, my clothes, the rug that still bore a faint red stain from my sister's party, but felt like it belonged to me alone. Each trip made me lighter, even as my arms ached. I left their things untouched, the knickknacks, the endless clutter my sister brought home, because none of it was mine, and I had no intention of carrying their weight anymore. At home, my distance was obvious. I didn't sit at the table. I didn't play mediator between their arguments. I answered questions with one word, if at all. My sister rolled her eyes and called me moody. Mom muttered about ungrateful children, but I let it slide because soon, their opinions would mean nothing. Late one night, when I was filling a box with the last of my keepsakes, I found a notebook I'd kept years ago, back when I still believed my hard work would win me their respect. The first page was a list of goals. Save for school, buy a car, travel. I traced the words with my finger, and it hit me that none of it had happened. Not because I failed, but because I had been draining myself dry for people who never wanted me to have more than them. I closed the notebook and packed it too. That night, I emailed a landlord 3 states away about an apartment listing. My voice didn't shake, my hands didn't sweat. For the first time in years, the future didn't scare me. What scared me was staying here another minute longer than I had to. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. I came home one evening to find both Mom and my sister waiting in the kitchen like they'd staged an intervention, except the roles were twisted. Mom's arms were crossed tight, her lips thin. My sister leaned against the counter, smirking like she'd already won. "We need to talk," Mom started, her voice dripping with that performative calm that always preceded a demand. "Your sister's birthday is coming up and we're planning something special. We'll need your help with the expenses." My stomach clenched, but I forced myself to stay still, setting my bag down carefully. "No," I said simply. My sister scoffed. "Oh, come on. Don't be so dramatic. It's not even that much." "It's always not that much," I shot back, my voice steady, "until I look at my account and see that everything I worked for is gone while you two act like money just falls out of the sky." Mom's eyes narrowed. "We are family. Families share. You've always understood that." I met her gaze, and for the first time, I didn't look away. "No, families support each other. What we have here isn't family. It's me carrying both of you while you drain me dry." The silence that followed was suffocating. My sister's smirk faltered, replaced by a glare. Mom's face flushed red. "How dare you?" she whispered as if I had cursed her. I picked up my bag again, slinging it over my shoulder. "You'll figure it out," I said quietly, and I walked to my room, shutting the door behind me before either of them could respond. My heart pounded, but not with fear, with release. The line had been drawn, and this time I wasn't stepping back over it. Later that night, I slid my suitcases to the door and set my alarm for dawn. Because tomorrow, I wasn't just leaving the house for a shift. I was leaving for good. At dawn, the house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the muffled buzz of my sister's phone alarm going off in the next room. A sound she'd snooze until noon as always. I moved quietly, rolling the suitcases one at a time down the hallway, careful not to let the wheels thump against the floorboards. Each step felt like shedding a layer of skin I'd been forced to wear for years. When I reached the door, I hesitated. Not from doubt, but from the flood of memories that rushed in. The nights I sat up with fever because no one else cared to check on me. The mornings I watched Mom beam at my sister for things as simple as brushing her hair, while my overtime paychecks barely earned a nod. The endless sacrifices disguised as responsibility. I took a breath and turned the knob. The air outside was cool, the sky bruised with the first streaks of sunrise. My car sat at the curb, back seat already packed with the boxes I'd been sneaking out over the last week. I loaded the suitcases quickly, adrenaline pushing me forward, and when I slammed the trunk shut, it sounded like a final door closing behind me. I slid into the driver's seat, hands trembling as they gripped the wheel, not from fear but from the weight of freedom pressing in. For the first time, I wasn't rushing to the hospital or to the store for someone else's needs. I was driving for myself. Halfway down the block, my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Where are you? Your sister needs a ride to school." I stared at it, the absurdity of it making me laugh out loud. A sharp, almost wild sound in the empty car. I didn't reply. Instead, I put the phone face down and kept driving. Hours later, when I reached the small city where I'd lined up an interview, I parked outside a cafe and just sat there breathing. No demands, no noise, no one waiting at home with a list of needs, just me. I pulled out my notebook, the one with the old goals, and opened to a fresh page. I wrote 3 new ones. Find a place that's mine. Rest. Live. My chest loosened for the first time in years. They would be furious when they realized I wasn't coming back. They would call me ungrateful, selfish, cold. But I knew the truth now. I wasn't abandoning them. I was finally choosing me. And that choice, after years of being erased, was the purest form of revenge I could ever take. Back at the old house, the unraveling began faster than even I had imagined. The calls started first, Mom's number lighting up my phone again and again, alternating with my sister's, the messages escalating from confused to indignant to outright hostile. Where are you? Turned into, you can't just walk out on us. Then into, after everything I've done for you, you owe me. And finally, my sister's venom-laced voice note, good luck without us. You'll come crawling back. I didn't answer a single one. I let their words pile up like the dirty dishes they had always left for me, ignored and festering. Instead, I forwarded the lease transfer paperwork to the landlord, attaching my portion of documentation that proved I had been the only one consistently paying. When he called to confirm, I told him calmly that I would not be responsible beyond this month. He hesitated, then sighed, admitting he had seen the truth of it all along, that the account balance never matched what Mom claimed, that it was always my name on the checks. We'll sort it out, he said, and for the first time in years, that burden was no longer mine. Meanwhile, I settled into a small rental across town where no one knew my name, a single-room apartment with cracked walls and a leaky faucet, but every inch of it mine. No one burst in demanding favors. No one drained my account. No one mocked my exhaustion. The silence was profound, healing. At work, Carla hugged me when I told her I'd finally left. She said I looked 10 years younger, and when I caught my reflection in the break room mirror, I believed her. The hollowness in my cheeks was still there, but my eyes were brighter, steady. Nights were still hard. Sometimes I woke with a start, half expecting Mom to be pounding on the door, demanding, accusing. But the door stayed closed. The phone stayed silent once I blocked their numbers. And with each day, the space they had occupied in my head shrank smaller and smaller. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was relearning what it meant to live. Weeks passed, and the silence that once felt foreign became my sanctuary. I began to fill it with things I had long denied myself. Music humming softly in the evenings, books stacked on the nightstand that I actually had time to read, long walks after work without rushing home to meet someone else's demand. My paychecks stretched further than I thought possible. Without the endless drain of their emergencies, I could buy fresh groceries, fix my car, even tuck money away into savings. Each small purchase for myself, a pair of new shoes, a decent set of sheets, felt like rebellion, a declaration that I was worthy of comfort. The calls didn't stop immediately. They came from blocked numbers, from relatives dragged into the drama. An aunt left a voicemail dripping with accusation. How could you leave your mother like that? She sacrificed everything for you. I almost deleted it, but instead I saved it, not as guilt, but as a reminder of the script I had been fed my whole life. Sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. Always mine, never theirs. Eventually the noise quieted, replaced by rumors I heard secondhand, that my sister had to get a part-time job, that Mom was asking neighbors for help with bills. The thought once would have torn me apart with guilt. Now it barely registered beyond a dull sense of irony. They were capable all along. They had just never bothered because I had always been there to catch them. One evening, as I sat at my tiny kitchen table with a steaming bowl of pasta I'd made for myself, I realized I wasn't waiting anymore. Not waiting for their approval, not waiting for things to change, not waiting for a future that never came. I had it now, right here, in this quiet apartment, in this body that finally felt like it belonged to me. And that realization, that freedom, was worth more than anything they had ever taken. Months slipped by, and with every sunrise I felt further removed from the girl who once tiptoed around her own house, afraid of saying no. My days had a rhythm now, work, rest, simple pleasures that belonged only to me. I learned to cook meals that didn't come from the cheapest shelf in the store, and I savored the way the apartment smelled of garlic and herbs instead of stale takeout and cigarette smoke. I bought a secondhand armchair and placed it by the window, where I sat in the evenings with a cup of tea, watching the city lights flicker. No one interrupted me. No one demanded I get up to serve them. That peace felt extravagant, like luxury. Word of my family reached me in fragments, mostly through coworkers who still lived in my old neighborhood. My sister had finally taken a retail job, complaining loudly about the hours. Mom had started selling trinkets online, blaming me to anyone who would listen for her hard times. I listened politely, then let the information slide away, untouched. It wasn't my burden anymore. The strange thing was, the more I let go of them, the more I started to see myself clearly. I wasn't just a worker or a provider or a scapegoat. I was a woman who had survived being erased and had chosen to rewrite her story. Some nights I lay awake thinking about the years I lost, the youth I spent slaving for people who only saw me as convenient. Anger would rise, hot and sharp. But then I would remember where I was now, safe, free, alive, and the anger softened into resolve. I couldn't change the past, but I could protect every minute of the future. And that, more than revenge, felt like justice. The first holiday season on my own was the clearest proof that I had finally broken free. In the past, those weeks had been nothing but exhaustion layered over resentment. Me working extra shifts to cover the cost of gifts, decorations, food, only to come home to a house where my sister paraded new clothes bought with money I had earned, and Mom acted like the credit belonged to her. I used to collapse into bed after 12-hour shifts, too tired to enjoy anything, while they hosted friends in the living room I had paid to light and heat. That year, though, I walked home from the hospital beneath strings of twinkling lights, snow dusting the sidewalks, and for the first time, I wasn't dreading what waited at the door. My apartment smelled of cinnamon candles and fresh laundry, not stale beer or perfume. I decorated a small tree I had bought with my own money, secondhand, a little lopsided, but glowing beautifully in the corner of my living room. When I set a single wrapped gift beneath it, something I had bought just for myself, I felt an unfamiliar swell of pride. It wasn't about the price tag. It was about the fact that I had finally learned I deserved kindness, even if it came from my own hands. Meanwhile, the calls started again. My aunt rang one snowy afternoon, her voice sharp with judgment. "Your mother is devastated. She says you've abandoned her. You don't even come home for Christmas? What kind of daughter are you?" I let her words wash over me, then answered quietly but firmly, "I'm the kind of daughter who stopped being their servant." The silence that followed was louder than her accusations, and when she hung up, I felt no guilt. For once, I felt untouchable. I knew Mom wanted me back, not out of love, but because she missed the comfort of my labor, the endless well of sacrifice I used to provide. My sister, too, was struggling to adjust to life without me. Rumors trickled in that she hated her job, that she still complained daily about how unfair life was. I didn't laugh when I heard it. I didn't gloat. I simply noted it as confirmation of what I had always known. They were never incapable, just unwilling. That New Year's Eve, I stood at my window with a cup of tea, watching fireworks explode over the skyline. Alone, yes, but not lonely. For the first time, the quiet wasn't empty. It was mine. And as the clock struck midnight, I whispered a vow to myself. Never again would I trade my freedom for their comfort. They had written me out of their version of family the moment they reduced me to a wallet and a maid. Now I was writing myself back into existence. Every shift I worked from that day forward wasn't for them. It was for me, and the life I was building piece by piece, one breath of peace at a time. Spring came, and with it, the sharp contrast between the life I had escaped and the life I was finally carving out. The hospital where I worked offered me extra hours, but this time I said no. Not because I couldn't handle them, but because I no longer had to. I spent my weekends exploring farmers markets, sipping coffee in little cafes where no one knew my name, walking through parks without checking my phone for demands. Freedom had reshaped even the smallest details of my days. My paycheck, once swallowed whole by a household that gave nothing back, now stretched further than I thought possible. I bought myself a sturdy pair of shoes, a good winter coat, groceries that didn't come from the bargain bin. These were luxuries I used to deny myself because every cent was funneled into keeping the house running. Now those luxuries were necessities, reminders that I deserved to be cared for, even if I was the only one providing it. My family, meanwhile, had turned my absence into their favorite story. A cousin reached out one afternoon, curious, telling me that Mom had been painting me as the ungrateful child at gatherings. Apparently, my sister told anyone who would listen that I abandoned them without warning. I almost laughed. Without warning? I had spent years warning them, through exhaustion, through questions, through pleas that went unheard. They chose not to listen. The narrative they spun didn't anger me. It confirmed how much they needed to twist the truth to protect their own pride. But here's what they didn't realize. Every lie they told only highlighted the hole I had left behind. People who once pitied my sister for being too young to manage were starting to see her for what she was, capable but entitled. And Mom's constant complaints about money no longer inspired sympathy, only quiet judgment. Without me as the invisible safety net, their cracks were showing. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sun dip behind the buildings, I realized I didn't miss them. Not the noise, not the chaos, not the endless drain. What I missed were the years I had lost, the birthdays spent working overtime so my sister could have parties, the dreams deferred because Mom decided someone else's needs were always greater than mine. That grief was real, but it was paired with something stronger: resolve. I couldn't get those years back, but I could make damn sure I never surrendered another. And with that thought, I felt something inside me settle. The revenge wasn't in screaming or exposing them. It was in this quiet moment, tea in my hand, peace in my chest, while they finally faced the lives they had built without me. Summer brought with it the kind of warmth I hadn't felt in years, not just from the sun, but from the calm that came when life no longer felt like a battlefield. My days started slow now. I woke without alarms screeching at 5 a.m., brewed coffee in my own little kitchen, and sat by the window as the city stirred to life outside. Every sip tasted like freedom. At work, people noticed the change. Colleagues who had once whispered about how drained I looked now told me I glowed. Patients smiled when I walked into their rooms, and I had the energy to smile back. The fatigue that had clung to me like a second skin was gone, replaced with a quiet strength. Meanwhile, my family's silence grew heavier. The calls and messages had stopped after I blocked them, but through whispers and relatives I heard pieces of their unraveling. My sister had quit her job after a few months, complaining it was too much, and now drifted from one scheme to another, always chasing the easy route. Mom had started borrowing from friends, her pride slowly cracking under the weight of bills she used to push onto me. A part of me thought I should feel vindicated, but the truth was simpler. I felt nothing. Their struggles weren't mine anymore. I had shed their chaos like an old coat, and I wasn't about to put it back on. One evening, as I was walking home from a bookstore with a bag full of novels I'd always meant to read, I caught myself humming. Just humming. No one waiting for me with demands, no arguments lurking around the corner, no dread in my chest. Just me, my books, and the soft twilight. I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk and realized this was it. This was what I had been fighting for all along. Not grandeur, not applause. Just peace. A life where I wasn't invisible, where every ounce of effort went to building something that was mine. That night I wrote in my notebook again, beneath the page where I had once scrawled, "Find a place that's mine. Rest. Live." I added a fourth line, "Thrive," because surviving had been enough before. Now I wanted more. And this time, no one could take it from me. Autumn arrived, and with it came the final unraveling of everything I had once been forced to hold together. I learned from a coworker who still lived near my old street that my mother and sister had been evicted. The landlord, tired of excuses and empty promises, finally locked the door they had once ruled from as if it were a throne built on my back. Hearing it should have shaken me, but instead it felt distant, like news about strangers. Because that's what they had become, strangers who once fed off me and now had to face the consequences of their own choices. I didn't smile, I didn't celebrate, but I also didn't ache. I simply noted it as the natural outcome of what happens when people believe they can consume someone forever without ever giving back. By then, my own life had blossomed in ways I hadn't thought possible. I had been promoted at work. a quiet recognition of how much steadier, sharper, and more present I had become once the constant drain of family was gone. I had saved enough for a reliable car, and I began taking weekend trips to lakes, to small towns, to places I had only ever seen on postcards when I was too exhausted to dream. Each journey was a declaration. My life was mine now. I bought a new notebook, leather-bound, heavy in my hands, and filled its pages with plans that had nothing to do with sacrifice. Plans for courses I wanted to take, places I wanted to visit, even names for a future dog I might adopt when the time was right. Sometimes, late at night, memories crept in. The sound of my sister's laughter drifting from parties I had paid for, the image of my mother circling numbers on a bill like it was my duty to fix them, the sting of being told to smile while I bled myself dry. Those memories didn't choke me anymore. They were evidence, reminders of why I walked away, and in their place, new images grew stronger. The glow of my own lamp in my quiet apartment, the weight of books stacked beside my bed, the warmth of knowing every dollar I earned went exactly where I chose. The revenge, I realized, wasn't in their downfall. It was in my rise, in the simple, stubborn act of building a life so full and peaceful that their names no longer echoed in my head. When I thought of them now, it wasn't with longing or hatred. It was with clarity. They had taught me the cost of being invisible, and I had chosen never to pay it again. That was my justice. That was my freedom. And every morning I woke up in a bed I had paid for, in a home that was mine alone. I lived that revenge without saying a word. Winter settled in, and with it came the final chapter I hadn't realized I was writing all along. Snow dusted the rooftops outside my window, and for the first time in my life, I didn't associate the cold with dread. No looming bills waiting to devour my paycheck. No late-night demands echoing through thin walls. Just silence, soft and steady, wrapping itself around me like a blanket. I sat at my kitchen table with a mug of cocoa, the lights of my small tree glowing in the corner, and it struck me that I had finally done what they told me was impossible. I had built a life on my own terms. The messages from my family had stopped by then. Maybe they were too busy struggling. Maybe they had found new people to lean on. Maybe they had simply realized that I wasn't coming back. The absence of their voices used to feel strange, like a phantom pain. Now it felt like healing. I didn't need to hear their excuses or their anger. Because I already knew the truth, without me, they had to face the world as it really was. And without them, I finally had the chance to live. On New Year's Eve, as fireworks burst in the sky again, I stood at my window and whispered the words I had never dared to say before. I am free. Not borrowed freedom. Not temporary escape, but lasting, chosen freedom. My revenge wasn't a dramatic confrontation or a fiery takedown. It was this quiet, undeniable reality that I had walked away from people who erased me, and in doing so, I had discovered myself. I know now that family isn't blood. Family is respect, support, reciprocity. And if those things are missing, then you are not abandoning anyone by leaving. You are saving yourself. That truth is what I carry forward. Into every sunrise, every paycheck I spend on myself, every moment of rest I no longer feel guilty for. They thought I would always be the responsible one, the safety net, the shadow holding their world together. But my greatest act of defiance, my deepest form of revenge, was learning to let their world collapse without me, while I built something beautiful of my own. And every breath I take in this new life is proof that I didn't just survive them. I won.